Hello and welcome to the third video in the MB Sports Web Tryout List training series. In this video we're going to show some of the features and functions that you would use as the tryouts are ongoing, which would actually include the registration at the tryout session itself, to show how you can use that information to print off evaluation sheets. And then once the session is over, how players can be selected or released on an individual basis or in bulk. And lastly, we'll also show how you can use the custom content that is available on the tryout list page to convey additional information if you choose. So to quickly review what we've done so far, we're looking at our demo site here for the novice rep team, and this team has already added a tryout player list page to their team's menu, and we've already added a bunch of players to that tryout list. Now typically this is being done because in this association or team, they will have the opportunity to have pre-registered their players prior to tryouts, so that way they can enter their players into the system. Now, if you don't have the ability to know who's coming to the evaluation sessions, then we still recommend adding the players to the system as part of your tryout list, as part of the registration process for the evaluation. And the reason for doing that is that you can print off evaluation sheets. So to show you that, if we go into the control panel and to manage site content for our novice rep team, look at tryout list and then view/manage list. We have the list of players that have been put into the system beforehand. But if somebody shows up the night of the session, or you don't have any players pre-registered and you need to register them all on the night of the session, you can just click add player and go ahead and add those players. We recommend putting in the jerseys and jersey colors if you are keeping track of that as part of your registration process. Because what you can then do is use this print option with the evaluation list to give you a sheet that can be printed off, which will have all of the pertinent information required for the evaluators to identify the players who are taking part in the session, with a column that we've added here just to jot in a rating of some kind. Usually that would be either a number or some stars, and a box that is large enough for somebody to jot in some comments. And then once these tryout sessions have completed, then these could be compiled and brought back in and discussed amongst the group of evaluators to see who they would like to invite back to the next session. So this process typically happens anyway, so this is something that we think is a pretty good replacement for manually keeping track of who's registered and not registered, and who's actually on the field or on the ice for the evaluation as it's ongoing. Now, once the session has completed and there's decisions being made as far as who is being released and selected, then the person with the team webmaster access can just come back into here and view their manage list, and to select or release a player individually, just highlight that player and double click on them. That will then open the tryout player form where they can just change the status to either selected or released. So we'll mark this player as released and update, and we'll see what that does. So it keeps them on the list in the back end for this particular team, but it does indicate in red that they have been released. Similarly, if we want to take an individual player and mark them as selected, we can do the same thing. And again, that will also keep them in the list in the back end and mark them with green text as being selected. Now, if I were to click View Live right now, this would show me the tryout list to the public. And as mentioned previously, what happens when the list is being updated, that it will automatically hide for a period of 5 minutes after that last change has been made. So rather than waiting for that to show up, I'll just explain that what will happen is, by default, the tryout list will only include players who are either pending or selected. So it will not differentiate, because it will not show people whether they've been pending or selected. By default, you can actually turn that on, and we'll cover that in the last video in the series talking about security and different options. But by default, it's just going to show players who are either pending or selected in this list. What will also happen is that any player that's marked as released by default will not show up at all. So the instructions that you would give to the parents or players would be to return to the tryout list at a predetermined time when you know you're going to be updating the list, and then just tell them that if you see your name on the list, please come back to the next session. If your name is not on the list, then you'll give them separate instructions for what they need to do next. So that's doing them individually. If you want to use or release a whole bunch of players or select a bunch of players at the same time, then you have options to bulk release or bulk select. These are very similar in how they work, so I'll just do bulk release. There are instructions on this page that tell you how to use it, but basically what it says is you can take any player that's in the list of players available, click and drag them across, or double click on them, or click on them and use the arrow to move them across, back and forth. Either way, you can move these players back and forth. Once you're satisfied with the list of players to be released, then we do force you to check this box to indicate that you have double checked that everybody in this list, you do actually want them to be released, and then click update. That will simply mark all those players as being released. Now, if your association has tryout progression, then what will have happened, and we'll use it in the demo site just to show how it works, is that from the novice rep team we set up previously that players who get marked release would show up on the novice local team. So if we go to the novice local team and look at the tryout list and view manage list, we now have all those players that we marked as released off of the rep team showing up on the tryout list team, or tryout list for the novice local league team. Any information that was added for the player comes down with them, so their code and their jersey and also anything entered in the group would come down with the player to the next list. So for example, the group, if your association is using that to indicate whether a player is a special status, maybe an import or something like that, and maybe the rep team allows imports but the local league team doesn't, the local league would know that that player is an import by having that information come down in the group column. Similarly, if you're handing out codes instead of doing player names on the site, then their codes would stay with them. If you want to give them new codes on the new team, then you can just edit the player and then give them a new code. So that's how the tryout progression does work. Now we'll just go back to the novice rep team and show off one last thing that you can do as tryouts are ongoing. So on the View Manage List page, there is the opportunity to put in what we call custom content onto the page, and it shows up above the list. Now, there's no real requirement to use the custom content. That's something that each person can use if they would like to or not. To edit the information that's in that custom content, though, you can simply double-click on the custom content part, or you can just click on the edit content button. Either way, they open up this big box, and whatever you type in that box, whether it's some sort of special instructions or maybe it's a list of players who you would like to see participate in an upcoming exhibition game, anything like that, you can put into these custom content areas on the tryout page. Now, the one thing we'll caution on is if you've chosen to not show any names in the tryout list and you're using this to indicate who you want to come back to an exhibition game, you probably don't want to put their player names into the special instructions part at the top. But again, these things can be used for whatever you want to use it for, or you don't have to use them at all. Whatever purpose that you deem necessary to help provide instructions to the people who are looking at the list.